The laundress's fingers had gone numb an hour ago, but Olivia Kennedy kept scrubbing, her knuckles raw and bleeding as she worked the washboard in the icy water behind the boarding house. It was January 1883 in Gila City, Arizona Territory, and while most folks thought the desert never got cold, they had never spent a winter dawn washing other people's linens in water that had frozen over twice already that morning. She had to keep breaking the ice with her bare hands, plunging the soiled sheets and shirts into the brutal cold because Mrs. Hartwell, who owned the boarding house, would not let her heat water for the washing. That cost extra firewood, and Mrs. Hartwell was not about to spend a single cent more than necessary on the help. Olivia's breath came out in white puffs as she worked, her threadbare shawl doing nothing to keep out the biting wind that whipped down from the mountains. She was 22 years old and had been working as a laundress for the past 4 years, ever since her father had died and left her alone in the world with nothing but debts. The work had aged her hands beyond her years, leaving them chapped and scarred, though her face still held the soft beauty of youth, with auburn hair that she kept pinned back and green eyes that had not yet lost all their light. She did not hear the footsteps approaching, too focused on trying to get feeling back into her fingers long enough to finish the pile of washing that still remained. The sun was barely cresting the horizon, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and pink, but Olivia had no time to appreciate such things. She had to finish this batch before breakfast, then serve the boarders, then start on the mending, then prepare the noon meal, then wash the dishes, then start the evening tasks. The list went on, each day bleeding into the next in an endless cycle of work that left her exhausted and aching. "Miss, you are going to lose your fingers if you keep that up." The voice startled her so badly that she dropped the shirt she had been scrubbing. She spun around, her wet hands instinctively clutching her shawl tighter, and found herself looking up at a tall cowboy she had never seen before. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath his worn hat and eyes the color of strong coffee. He wore a heavy coat that looked warm, and his face bore the weathered look of a man who spent most of his time outdoors. "I am sorry, I did not mean to scare you," he said, and his voice was gentle despite its deep timbre. "I am staying at the boarding house, Bennett Hawkins. I just arrived last night." Olivia tried to curtsy, which was difficult while kneeling beside a wash tub, and immediately felt foolish. "Mr. Hawkins, I apologize if the noise disturbed you." "The noise?" He looked genuinely confused. "No, I was just heading to the stables to check on my horse and saw you out here. It has got to be below freezing. Why are you washing in cold water?" She did not know how to answer that without speaking ill of Mrs. Hartwell, so she simply said, "It is my work, sir. I need to finish before breakfast." Bennett Hawkins crouched down beside her, and she could see concern etched across his handsome features. He reached out and gently took one of her hands, examining her raw, bleeding knuckles with a frown that deepened with each second. "This is not right. You are hurt." "I am fine," Olivia protested, trying to pull her hand back, but his grip was firm though not painful. "You are not fine. Look at this." He turned her hand over, revealing the deep cracks in her skin, some of which were bleeding freely. "These could get infected. Have you got anything to treat them with?" Olivia shook her head. She could not afford such luxuries on the pittance Mrs. Hartwell paid her. Most of her wages went to paying off her father's debts, debts that seemed to grow rather than shrink no matter how much she paid. Bennett stood up, still holding her hand, and gently pulled her to her feet. "Come on, you are coming inside." "I cannot," Olivia said, panic rising in her chest. "I have to finish the washing. Mrs. Hartwell will be furious if it is not done." "Mrs. Hartwell can go hang," Bennett said firmly. You are freezing and hurt, and I will not stand by and watch a woman suffer like this. Please, Mr. Hawkins, you do not understand. I need this position. I have nowhere else to go." The desperation in her voice was plain, and she hated how weak she sounded, but it was the truth. Bennett's expression softened. "I am not going to let you get in trouble. I will speak to Mrs. Hartwell myself. But right now, you are coming inside where it is warm, and we are going to do something about those hands." Before Olivia could protest further, he had scooped up her wash basket with his free hand and was leading her toward the back door of the boarding house. His hand was warm around hers, and despite her fear of what Mrs. Hartwell would say, she found herself following him, her frozen feet stumbling slightly on the hard ground. The kitchen was blessedly warm, the stove already lit for breakfast preparations. Bennett set down the basket and guided Olivia to a chair near the stove. "Sit," he commanded, and his tone left no room for argument. She sat, her whole body starting to shake as the warmth began to thaw her frozen limbs. Bennett pumped water into a kettle and set it on the stove to warm, then rummaged through the kitchen until he found a clean cloth. He pulled up a chair directly in front of her and sat down, their knees almost touching. "Let me see your hands," he said softly. Olivia hesitated, then held them out. They looked even worse in the lamplight, red and raw and swollen. Bennett took them gently in his own, his touch careful as he examined them. "What in the name of God is going on here?" Mrs. Hartwell's shrill voice cut through the quiet of the kitchen. She stood in the doorway, her gray hair still in curling papers, her face red with anger. She was a large woman, broad in the shoulders and stern in demeanor, and Olivia had learned to fear that particular tone of voice. Olivia tried to stand, but Bennett's hand on her shoulder kept her seated. He stood instead, placing himself between Olivia and Mrs. Hartwell. "Good morning, madam," he said, his voice polite but firm. "I found your employee outside washing linens in freezing water with her bare hands. Her hands are badly injured and she is half frozen. I brought her inside to warm up." "She has work to do," Mrs. Hartwell snapped. "That washing does not do itself, Mr. Hawkins, and I will thank you not to interfere with how I run my establishment. With all due respect, madam, what you are doing is dangerous. This young woman could lose her fingers to frostbite or get a serious infection from those wounds. Surely the washing can wait until the sun is properly up and she can use warm water." Mrs. Hartwell's face grew even redder. "Warm water costs firewood. Firewood costs money. If Miss Kennedy does not like the conditions of her employment, she is welcome to find work elsewhere." They both knew that was an empty threat. There was nowhere else in Gila City where Olivia could find work. The other boarding houses had their own help, and the saloons wanted women for purposes Olivia would never stoop to. Mrs. Hartwell knew she had Olivia trapped, and she exploited that knowledge ruthlessly. Bennett's jaw tightened. "How much does she owe you, Mrs.?" Hartwell blinked, surprised by the question. "I beg your pardon. Miss Kennedy said she could not leave because she needed this position. So I am asking, how much does she owe you? That is none of your concern, Mr. Hawkins. I am making it my concern. Name your price, Mrs." Hartwell's eyes narrowed, calculating. $200. Her father owed me for 6 months of back rent before he died, and she has been working it off. Olivia gasped. "That is a lie. Father only owed you for 2 months, and I have been paying it back for 4 years. "Are you calling me a liar, girl?" Mrs. Hartwell's voice was dangerous. Bennett held up a hand. $200, fine, I will pay it." "What?" Olivia and Mrs. Hartwell spoke in unison, though with very different emotions. Bennett reached into his coat and pulled out a leather wallet. "I will pay her debt right now in full. In exchange, her employment with you ends immediately." "Mr. Hawkins, no. Olivia stood up, her heart racing. "You cannot. That is too much money. I cannot accept such a thing." He turned to look at her, and the warmth in his eyes made her breath catch. "Yes, you can. No one should have to work in conditions like that. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. You can pay me back over time." Mrs. Hartwell was already nodding, her greedy eyes fixed on the money Bennett was counting out. Cash only. "I will write up a receipt stating her debt is paid in full. You will also write that she is released from your employment with no ill will, and that you have no further claim on her," Bennett added. Mrs. Hartwell looked like she wanted to argue, but the lure of $200 in cash was too strong. "Fine. Wait here." She bustled out of the kitchen, leaving Olivia and Bennett alone. Olivia sank back into her chair, her mind reeling. "Why would you do this? You do not even know me." Bennett knelt down in front of her chair, bringing them eye to eye. "Because it is the right thing to do. Because watching you out there in the cold made something in my chest ache. Because no one deserves to be treated the way she has been treating you. But $200. Olivia could barely comprehend that amount of money. "I can afford it," Bennett said simply. "I have been working cattle drives for the past 8 years, and I have been saving my pay. I came to Gila City to look into buying some land, maybe starting my own small ranch. I have the money, Olivia. Let me help you." The way he said her name, soft and careful, made her eyes sting with tears. No one had spoken to her with such kindness in so long that she had almost forgotten what it felt like. Mrs. Hartwell returned with paper and pen, and Bennett watched carefully as she wrote out the receipt, making sure every word was as they had agreed. He counted out the money, and Mrs. Hartwell snatched it up, counting it twice before nodding. "Her things are in the attic room. She can collect them and be gone within the hour. She will collect them when her hands are properly treated and she is warm," Bennett said firmly, "and I will help her carry them." Mrs. Hartwell looked like she wanted to argue, but she had her money. She waved a dismissive hand and left the kitchen, already counting her windfall again. Olivia sat in stunned silence as Bennett checked the water on the stove. He poured some of the warm water into a basin, testing it with his finger to make sure it was not too hot, then brought it over to her. He sat down again and gently placed her hands in the warm water. The sensation was almost painful as feeling returned to her frozen fingers, but it was a good pain, the kind that meant healing. Bennett added a bit of salt to the water, then found some clean bandages in the cupboard. "I learned some basic doctoring on the trail," he explained as he worked. "You get hurt a lot working cattle, and sometimes you are days from any real medical help. These cuts need to be clean and covered, or they will get infected." Olivia watched him work, his large, calloused hands surprisingly gentle as he cleaned and bandaged her wounds. "I do not understand why you are doing this," she whispered. Bennett looked up at her, and the honesty in his eyes took her breath away. "The truth. I saw you from my window this morning before the sun was even up, working in the cold. Something about the way you kept going, even though you had to be freezing, even though your hands were bleeding. It made me angry. Angry that anyone would expect that of another person. Angry that you had no choice. I just knew I had to do something." "You have changed my entire life in the span of an hour," Olivia said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I do not know how to thank you. You do not have to thank me." Bennett finished bandaging her hands and sat back. "But you do have to let me help you figure out what comes next. Do you have anywhere to go?" Olivia shook her head. "I have been living here for 4 years. I have no family left, no friends. She trailed off, the reality of her situation suddenly hitting her. She was free of Mrs. Hartwell, free of the debt and the endless work, but she had nowhere to go and no way to support herself. "Then you will stay here in town for now," Bennett said. We will get you a room at the hotel, a proper one, and we will figure out what you want to do." "I cannot let you pay for that too," Olivia protested. "Consider it part of the loan," Bennett said with a small smile. "Besides, I need to be in town for a few weeks anyway while I look at properties and meet with the land office. It will be nice to have someone to talk to." There was something in the way he said it that made Olivia wonder if he was lonely too. This man who had just swept into her life like a hero from a dime novel, changing everything with his kindness and his quiet strength. "I will pay you back," she said firmly. "Every cent. I do not know how yet, but I will find a way." "I believe you," Bennett said, and she could tell he meant it. "Now, let us get your things and get you settled somewhere warm and safe." Olivia's room in the attic was barely large enough for a narrow bed and a small trunk. All her worldly possessions fit into that trunk with room to spare. 2 dresses besides the one she was wearing, a few undergarments, a hairbrush that had been her mother's, and a small Bible. That was all she had to show for 22 years of life. Bennett carried the trunk down the stairs without comment, though she saw his jaw tighten when he saw how little there was. They left through the front door, and Olivia did not look back at the boarding house that had been her prison for 4 years. The Gila City Hotel was the nicest building in town, a 2-story structure with real glass windows and a painted sign. Olivia had walked past it 100 times but never dreamed she would stay there. The clerk, a thin man with spectacles, looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain, taking in her threadbare dress and worn boots. "I need a room for the lady," Bennett said, his voice cool. "Your best available." The clerk's demeanor changed immediately when Bennett laid down a gold coin. "Of course, sir. We have a lovely room on the 2nd floor, overlooks Main Street. Very quiet, very respectable." "That will do. She will be staying indefinitely. Put any expenses on my account." "Mr. Hawkins," Olivia began, but he shook his head. "We will discuss it later. Right now, you need to rest and warm up properly." The room was the nicest place Olivia had ever seen. It had a real bed with a thick mattress and quilts, a washstand with a mirror, a small table with 2 chairs, and even a rug on the floor. The window did indeed overlook Main Street, and winter sunlight streamed through the clean glass. Bennett set her trunk at the foot of the bed. "I am going to have them bring up hot water for washing, and I will arrange for meals to be brought up to you for today. You need to rest." "I have rested enough for a lifetime," Olivia said. "What I need is to figure out how to earn my keep." "Tomorrow," Bennett said firmly. "Today you rest, you let those hands heal, and you let yourself believe that things are going to be different now. Can you do that?" Olivia looked at him, this stranger who had saved her, and nodded slowly. "I can try." "Good." He moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Olivia, I am glad I saw you this morning. I know that might sound strange, but I am glad I could help." "I am glad too," she whispered. After he left, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, her bandaged hands in her lap, and let herself cry. She cried for the years of hardship, for her father who had died and left her alone, for the girl she had been before the work had aged her. But she also cried with relief and a strange, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. True to his word, Bennett had hot water sent up, along with a tray of food that was more than Olivia typically ate in 2 days. There was fresh bread with butter, scrambled eggs, bacon, potatoes, and even a slice of apple pie. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, hardly able to believe this was real. After she had washed and changed into her least worn dress, she sat by the window and watched the town go about its business. Gila City was a small but growing town, serving the nearby mining operations and the ranches that dotted the desert. The main street was busy with wagons and riders, people going about their daily lives, all of them free in ways Olivia had not been for years. She must have dozed off in the chair because she woke to a soft knocking on her door. The sun had moved considerably, suggesting it was now afternoon. She opened the door to find Bennett standing there with a large package wrapped in brown paper. "I hope I did not wake you," he said. "But I thought you might need this." Olivia took the package, confused. "What is it?" "Open it and see." She untied the string and folded back the paper, then gasped. Inside was a dress, a beautiful dress in deep blue wool with black trim and buttons. There was also a warm cloak, a pair of leather gloves, new stockings, and sturdy boots. "Mr. Hawkins, I cannot accept this," she said, even as her fingers stroked the soft fabric of the dress. "The gloves are necessary for your hands while they heal," Bennett said practically. "And you cannot go around in winter without a proper cloak. The rest, well, I just thought you deserved something nice. Mrs. Henderson at the general store helped me pick them out. She said they should fit." Olivia looked up at him, this man who kept giving and giving without asking for anything in return. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Bennett was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying her face. "Can I be honest with you, please? When I saw you this morning, working in the cold, so determined and so alone, something just clicked into place in my chest. I have been drifting for years, working cattle drives, saving money, not really sure what I was saving it for. I came to Gila City thinking I would buy land and start a ranch, but I did not know why. I had no one to build anything for. But seeing you, helping you, it feels like the first thing I have done in years that actually means something. Does that make any sense?" "Yes," Olivia said softly. "It makes perfect sense." They stood there in the doorway, the package of clothes between them, something unspoken building in the air. Bennett cleared his throat. "There is a decent restaurant down the street. Would you do me the honor of joining me for supper? I promise it is respectable. We can sit by the window where everyone can see us, perfectly proper." Olivia smiled, the expression feeling strange on her face after so long. "I would like that very much." "Good. I will call for you at 6 if that suits you." "It suits me perfectly." After he left, Olivia tried on the new dress, and it fit as though it had been made for her. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. With her hair properly brushed and pinned, the new dress hugging her figure, she looked like a lady, not a laundress. She looked like someone who had a future ahead of her, instead of just an endless string of washing and scrubbing. The restaurant was called the Silver Spoon, and it was the finest dining establishment in Gila City. The owner, a Mexican man named Señor Garcia, greeted them warmly and showed them to a table by the front window, just as Bennett had promised. The restaurant was busy with the evening crowd, ranchers and miners and businessmen all enjoying their supper. Olivia had never eaten in a restaurant before, and she studied the handwritten menu with wide eyes. Bennett ordered for both of them, choosing roasted chicken with vegetables and fresh bread, and a bottle of wine to share. "I am not sure I should drink wine," Olivia said hesitantly. "One glass will not hurt," Bennett assured her. "It is actually quite good. Señor Garcia imports it from California." The meal was delicious, better than anything Olivia had ever tasted. As they ate, they talked, really talked, in a way Olivia had not talked to anyone in years. Bennett told her about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, how his parents had died in a cholera outbreak when he was 18, how he had sold the farm and headed west looking for something he could not name. "I worked on ranches in Texas for a few years, learned the cattle business. Then I started hiring on for the big drives up to Kansas. The pay was good, and I was good at it. But it is a hard life, weeks on the trail with nothing but cattle and dust, and the occasional stampede to break the monotony. I am getting too old for it, I think. I want something more permanent, something that is mine. And you think you will find that here in Gila City? Olivia asked. Maybe. There is good grazing land in the valleys north of here and water from the mountains. A man could build a decent ranch if he was willing to work for it. What about you? What did you want before? Before my life fell apart, Olivia finished. She took a sip of wine, feeling it warm her from the inside. I wanted ordinary things. A home, a family, someone to love who loved me back. My mother died when I was young, and it was just my father and me. He worked as a clerk, but he had a weakness for cards and whiskey. After he died, I found out he had debts all over town. Mrs. Hartwell said she would let me work them off rather than putting me out on the street. I thought it was kindness at the time. I was such a fool. You were not a fool. You were alone and scared, and she took advantage of that. But you are not alone anymore. The weight of those words settled over Olivia like a blanket. She looked across the table at Bennett, at this man who had changed everything, and felt something shift in her heart. It was too soon to call it love. They had known each other less than a day, but it was definitely something. A connection, a spark, a possibility. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we figure things out together, Bennett said. I need to be here for a few weeks at least, looking at land and making arrangements. You need time to heal and decide what you want to do. So we take it slow, we get to know each other, and we see where this goes. Is that all right with you? Yes, Olivia said. Yes, that is more than all right. They finished their meal as the sun set, painting the desert sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Bennett walked Olivia back to the hotel, their steps slow, neither wanting the evening to end. At the door to her room, he took her bandaged hand gently in his. Thank you for joining me tonight, he said. I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed an evening so much. Thank you for everything, Olivia replied. For this morning, for the clothes, for the meal, for making me feel like a person again instead of just a pair of hands to do work. Bennett lifted her bandaged hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. You are so much more than that, Olivia Kennedy. I hope you know that. He left her there, blushing and smiling, her heart racing in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with hope. The next few days established a routine that felt both strange and wonderful to Olivia. She would wake in her comfortable bed, dress in her new clothes, and have breakfast brought up to her room. Bennett would call on her mid-morning, and they would walk through town together while he conducted his business. He introduced her to everyone he met, treating her like a lady, with respect and courtesy that made people look at her differently than they had when she was just the boarding house laundress. They met with the land office clerk, a nervous man named Pritchard, who showed Bennett maps of available properties. There was a section of land about 5 miles north of town, along a creek that ran year-round from mountain snowmelt. It had good grass, some timber, and a small cabin that the previous owner had built before deciding ranch life was not for him. It is not much, Pritchard said apologetically. The cabin needs work and there are no outbuildings yet. But the land is solid, the water rights are clear, and the price is fair. Bennett studied the map, then looked at Olivia. Would you like to see it? Me? Olivia was surprised. Why would my opinion matter? Because I value it, Bennett said simply. So they rented a buggy from the livery and drove out to see the property. It was a beautiful winter day, cold but clear, the sun bright in an endless blue sky. The road out of town was rough but passable, winding through desert scrub that gradually gave way to grassland as they climbed into the foothills. The property was as Pritchard had described. The creek ran clear and cold, lined with cottonwood trees that would provide shade in the brutal summer heat. The grass was dormant now, brown and dry, but Olivia could imagine how green it would be in spring. The cabin was small, just 2 rooms, but it was solidly built with a good stone chimney. Bennett helped her down from the buggy, and they walked the property together. He pointed out where he would build a barn, where the corrals would go, where he might plant a garden if he could get the irrigation right. He talked about starting with a small herd, maybe 20 or 30 head, and building from there. Olivia listened to his plans and felt her heart swell. She could picture it so clearly, this place transformed from empty land into a working ranch. She could see it so vividly that it made her chest ache. "What do you think?" Bennett asked as they stood by the creek, watching the water flow past. "I think it is perfect," Olivia said honestly. "I think you could build something wonderful here." Bennett said quietly. "We could build something wonderful here." Olivia turned to look at him. "Bennett, I know it is too soon," he said quickly. "I know we have only known each other a few days, but Olivia, I have never felt this way before. I look at this land and I do not just see a ranch, I see a home. I see a future, and when I picture that future, you are in it." Her breath caught. "You barely know me. Then let me know you better. Let me court you properly. Let me show you that this is real." He took both her hands in his, careful of her still healing wounds. "I am not asking you to marry me today. I am just asking you to give this a chance. Give us a chance." Olivia looked into his honest, hopeful eyes and felt the last of her resistance crumble. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will give us a chance." Bennett's smile was like sunrise, warm and bright and full of promise. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Olivia let herself lean into his strength. They stood there by the creek, holding each other as the winter wind whispered through the dry grass, and Olivia felt truly safe for the first time in years. The courtship that followed was the happiest time of Olivia's life. Bennett was attentive without being overbearing, romantic without being improper. He brought her flowers that he rode out into the desert to find, hardy winter blooms that most people would not consider beautiful, but that Olivia cherished. He took her to church on Sunday, where the congregation was surprised to see the former laundress sitting in a pew beside the handsome cowboy who was buying the creek property. He also made sure she was not dependent on him. He helped her find work doing alterations and mending for Mrs. Henderson at the general store, work she could do sitting down that did not destroy her hands. The pay was modest but honest, and it let Olivia start paying Bennett back for everything he had done for her. "You do not have to do this," Bennett said when she gave him her first week's wages. "Yes, I do," Olivia insisted. "I need to know I can take care of myself. I need to know that I am with you because I choose to be, not because I have no other options." Bennett understood, and he accepted her money with the same respect he had shown her from the beginning. He was careful with her heart, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, content to build their relationship on a foundation of friendship and trust. In the evenings, they would sit in the hotel lobby, which had a nice fireplace and comfortable chairs. The hotel owner, a widow named Mrs. Tremaine, approved of their courtship and made sure they always had a pot of coffee and a good light for reading or conversation. Bennett would tell Olivia stories of his time on the cattle drives, making her laugh with tales of stubborn steers and ornery horses. Olivia would share memories of her childhood, of happier times before her mother died and her father started drinking. "You ever wish things had been different?" Bennett asked one evening. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if your father had not had those debts?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "I used to. I used to lie awake at night and imagine all the things that could have been different, but if any of it had been different, I would not have been washing clothes behind the boarding house that morning, and you would not have seen me. And we would not be sitting here right now. So no, I do not wish things had been different. Every hard thing I went through led me to you." Bennett reached over and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I feel the same way. All those years drifting, working drives, never settling down. I was waiting for you. I just did not know it." 6 weeks after that cold January morning when Bennett had first seen Olivia working in the freezing water, he bought the property by the creek. The paperwork was finalized at the land office and Pritchard shook his hand with genuine warmth. "Congratulations, Mr. Hawkins. You are now a landowner and a rancher." "Not much of a rancher yet," Bennett said with a smile, "but I will be." He took Olivia out to the property that afternoon to celebrate. He had been riding out every day to work on the cabin, fixing the roof and chinkling the walls and making it livable. Now he showed her what he had accomplished, and Olivia was amazed at the transformation. The cabin was clean and tight, with a working stove and even a bed frame Bennett had built himself. "I bought some cattle," he told her as they sat on the porch steps in the winter sunshine. "Just 10 head to start, but they are good stock. They will be delivered next week. And I hired a young fellow named Tommy who wants to learn the ranching business. He will stay in the barn once I get it built, help me with the work." "It is really happening," Olivia said wonderingly. "Your dream is becoming real." "Our dream," Bennett corrected. He turned to her, his expression serious. "Olivia, I know we have not been courting long by normal standards, but nothing about how we met was normal, and I do not want to wait any more." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "It is not much," he said, "but it is honest and it is real, just like my feelings for you. Olivia Kennedy, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears, joyful tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Bennett, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gently at first, then with growing passion. It was Olivia's first real kiss, and it was everything she had dreamed it would be, warm and sweet and full of promise. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Gila City. Olivia wore a new dress that Mrs. Henderson had helped her make, white with lace at the collar and cuffs. Bennett wore his best suit, which he had not worn since leaving Missouri years ago. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, presided over by Reverend Matthews, with Mrs. Henderson and Señor Garcia standing as witnesses. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them man and wife, Bennett kissed Olivia with such joy and tenderness that several people in the small congregation dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. The town had grown fond of the love story unfolding in their midst, the cowboy who had saved the laundress and won her heart. After the ceremony, Señor Garcia hosted a small reception at his restaurant, refusing payment despite Bennett's protests. "You let me do this," he insisted. "It is my wedding gift to you both. Love like yours should be celebrated." They spent their wedding night at the hotel, in the same room where Olivia had stayed since that first day. Bennett was gentle and patient, making sure Olivia felt safe and cherished. He had waited so long for this for her, and he wanted everything to be perfect. Afterward, they lay in each other's arms, Olivia's head on Bennett's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered. "I do not think I have said that enough, but I do, Bennett. I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Do not be scared," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this, never regret choosing me." "I could never regret you," Olivia said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They moved to the ranch the next day, loading Olivia's few possessions into the wagon along with supplies they would need. As they drove away from Gila City, Olivia looked back at the town one last time, at the boarding house where she had suffered for so long, and felt nothing but relief that that chapter of her life was over. The cabin was small but cozy, and Olivia immediately set about making it a home. She made curtains for the windows from fabric Mrs. Henderson had given them as a wedding gift. She arranged their few pieces of furniture to make the most of the limited space. She planted herbs in a small patch by the door, even though it was still winter, planning for spring. Bennett worked from dawn to dusk building the barn and corrals. True to his word, Tommy arrived, a gangly boy of 19 with more enthusiasm than skill but a willingness to learn. The 10 head of cattle arrived as well, and suddenly they were really ranchers with livestock to care for and a business to build. The work was hard, but it was good work, purposeful work. Olivia had never been afraid of hard work, but there was a difference between scrubbing other people's laundry in freezing water and building a life with the man she loved. At the end of each day, when Bennett came in dirty and tired, she had a hot meal waiting and a smile that made him forget his exhaustion. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch if the weather was fair, or by the fire if it was cold, and plan their future. They talked about how many cattle the land could support, about whether they should try to raise horses as well, about someday building a bigger house when they could afford it. "And children," Bennett said one evening, his hand resting on Olivia's still flat stomach. "I hope we will have children. A whole houseful if we are blessed." "I hope so too," Olivia said, leaning into his warmth. "I want our children to grow up knowing they are loved, knowing they are safe. I want them to have everything we did not have." "They will," Bennett promised. "We will make sure of it." Spring came to the Arizona Territory in a rush of green and gold. The grass that had been brown and dormant exploded into life, and the cattle grew fat on the good grazing. Wildflowers bloomed across the desert in impossible colors, and the creek ran high with snowmelt. Olivia's herb garden flourished, and she started a vegetable garden as well, coaxing tomatoes and beans and squash from the desert soil. And in spring, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Bennett one evening after supper, when they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. He had been talking about buying more cattle, about how well the ranch was doing when she quietly interrupted him. "Bennett, I have something to tell you." He turned to her, immediately attentive. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine. I am." She smiled, her hand moving to her stomach. "We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Bennett just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then his face broke into the biggest smile Olivia had ever seen. He let out a whoop of joy, jumped to his feet and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "We are having a baby," he shouted to the desert, to the sky, to anyone who might hear. "I am going to be a father," he set her down gently, suddenly worried. "Are you all right? Should you be working so hard? Do you need to see a doctor?" Olivia laughed at his concern. "I am fine. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. But yes, I will see Dr. Phillips in town next week just to make sure everything is as it should be." Bennett insisted on driving her to town himself, would not let her take the wagon alone even though she was perfectly capable. Dr. Phillips, an elderly man who had been practicing medicine longer than Olivia had been alive, examined her and pronounced her healthy and her pregnancy progressing normally. "The baby should come in late October or early November," he said. "Make sure you eat well and get plenty of rest. And Mr. Hawkins, try not to hover too much. Your wife is not made of glass." But Bennett could not help hovering. He insisted Olivia stop working in the garden when the summer heat arrived, brought her water constantly, worried over every little thing. Olivia found it endearing even when it was frustrating. "I am pregnant, not dying," she told him more than once. I can still work, still take care of the house." "I know," Bennett said, "but you are carrying our child. That is the most important work in the world right now. Let me take care of you the way you take care of me." The ranch continued to grow. Bennett bought more cattle, expanding their herd to 40 head. He finished the barn and built a chicken coop, and Olivia delighted in having fresh eggs every morning. Tommy proved to be a good worker, learning quickly and taking on more responsibility. He was like a younger brother to both of them, often joining them for meals and becoming part of their small family. Summer passed in a haze of heat and hard work and happiness. Olivia's belly grew round with their child, and Bennett would spend evenings talking to the baby, telling stories and making promises about the life they would have. Olivia would rest her hands on her stomach and feel the baby move, strong kicks that made her laugh and wince at the same time. "This one is going to be a handful," she predicted. "Takes after his mother then," Bennett teased. "Or her father," Olivia countered. They did not care whether the baby was a boy or a girl. They just wanted a healthy child, someone to love and raise and pass the ranch on to someday. In late October, as the heat finally began to break and autumn arrived in the desert, Olivia went into labor. Bennett sent Tommy racing to town to fetch Dr. Phillips and Mrs. Henderson, who had experience with birthing. Then he stayed by Olivia's side, holding her hand and trying not to let her see how terrified he was. The labor was long and difficult. Olivia had always been slender, and the baby was big. As the hours stretched on and the pain intensified, Bennett began to fear he would lose her, that the miracle of their love would end in tragedy. He prayed harder than he had ever prayed in his life, begging God to spare his wife, to bring their child safely into the world. Just before dawn, after 18 hours of labor, Olivia gave birth to a boy. Dr. Phillips placed the screaming, red-faced infant in Bennett's arms while Mrs. Henderson tended to Olivia, and Bennett wept openly at the miracle of it. This tiny person, so perfect and new, was his son. His and Olivia's. "Is he all right?" Olivia asked weakly from the bed. "Let me see him." Bennett brought the baby to her and Olivia cradled him against her chest, tears streaming down her exhausted face. "He is beautiful," she whispered. "He is perfect." "Just like his mother," Bennett said, kissing her forehead. They named him William after Bennett's father. William Hawkins, born on the ranch his parents had built from nothing, loved from his first breath. The years that followed were full and good. The ranch continued to prosper, growing from 40 head of cattle to over 100. Bennett built the bigger house he had promised, a proper ranch house with multiple bedrooms and a large kitchen where Olivia could cook for the family and the hands they now employed. Tommy stayed on, becoming Bennett's right-hand man, and eventually the foreman when the operation grew large enough to need one. William grew from a baby into a toddler, then a sturdy little boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. He was bright and curious and fearless, keeping Olivia constantly busy as he explored every inch of the ranch. When William was 3, Olivia had another baby, a girl they named Sarah. 2 years after that came another boy, James. The house was full of noise and laughter and love, everything Olivia had dreamed of and more. On winter evenings, when the children were asleep and the work was done, Bennett and Olivia would sit together on the porch of their big house and look out at the ranch they had built. "Do you ever think about that morning?" Olivia asked one such evening. "When you found me washing clothes in the cold, all the time," Bennett admitted. "I think about how different my life would be if I had not looked out that window, if I had not decided to do something. I think about how close I came to never knowing you, never having this." He gestured at the house, the land, the life they had created. "I think about it too," Olivia said. I think about how hopeless I felt that morning, how certain I was that nothing would ever change. And then you appeared, like an answer to a prayer I did not even know I had prayed. Bennett took her hand, the hand that bore the scars of those years of hard labor. "You never have to work like that again," he said, as he had said so many times before. "I will never let you work like that again." "I know," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. "But you know what? I would go through it all again, every hard moment, every painful day, if it meant ending up here with you." "You do not have to," Bennett said firmly. "Those days are over. Now we have nothing but good days ahead of us." And he was right. The years continued to be good. The children grew healthy and strong. William showed a natural talent for working with horses and cattle, already helping his father at an age when most boys were still playing with toys. Sarah was gentle and kind, always bringing Olivia wildflowers and trying to help with the cooking. James was the wild one, always getting into mischief and making them laugh with his antics. The ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. Bennett's reputation for raising quality cattle spread, and buyers came from as far as California to purchase his stock. But success did not change him. He remained the same kind, honest man who had seen a woman in need and done something about it. He treated his workers fairly, paid them well, and earned their loyalty in return. Olivia became known for her generosity, always ready to help a neighbor in need, whether with food from her garden or nursing care when someone was sick. She remembered what it was like to have nothing, to be alone and afraid, and she made sure no one in their community had to suffer the way she had suffered. When William was 10, Sarah 8, and James 6, Olivia had one more child, another girl they named Ruth. "Our surprise blessing," Bennett called her, and indeed she was. With the older children able to help more around the ranch, Olivia had time to enjoy this baby in ways she had not been able to with the others. She would sit in the rocking chair Bennett had made for her and nurse Ruth while watching her other children play in the yard, and her heart would overflow with gratitude. The children knew the story of how their parents met. Olivia told them when they were old enough to understand, wanting them to know that their father was a hero, that he had saved her and changed her life. The children loved the story, asking to hear it again and again. "Tell us about when Papa found you," Sarah would beg. And Olivia would tell them about that cold January morning, about scrubbing laundry with frozen hands, about the cowboy who had appeared like something out of a dream and refused to let her suffer anymore. "Papa says you were the bravest person he ever met," William said once. "I was not brave," Olivia corrected gently. "I was just surviving. Your father was the brave one. He was brave enough to care about a stranger, brave enough to help even when he did not have to." "I want to be brave like Papa," James declared. "Then be kind," Bennett told him. "Real bravery is not about fighting or showing off. It is about doing the right thing even when it is hard, about standing up for people who cannot stand up for themselves." As the children grew older, they each found their place on the ranch. William became an expert horseman and took over much of the day-to-day cattle operations. Sarah surprised everyone by showing a talent for business, keeping the ranch's books and managing their finances with a sharp eye that impressed even her father. James became the ranch's best hand with a rope, able to catch any stray calf or wayward steer. And little Ruth, as she grew, showed her mother's gentle kindness, always ready with a smile or a kind word. The years rolled by in a rhythm of seasons, of planting and harvest, of births and branding, of the endless cycle of ranch life. There were hard times, too. A drought one year that nearly broke them before the rains finally came. A bout of fever that swept through the territory, taking neighbors and friends. A flash flood that destroyed part of their herd. But they weathered every storm together, their love and their family the anchor that kept them steady. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Bennett took Olivia back to Gila City. The town had grown considerably over the years, no longer the rough frontier settlement it had been when they first met. The boarding house where Olivia had worked was gone, torn down years ago to make room for a new bank. Mrs. Hartwell had died long since, her greed and cruelty forgotten by all but those who had suffered under her. They had dinner at the Silver Spoon, which was still owned by Señor Garcia, though he was gray-haired now and his son did most of the cooking. He remembered them, though, and he refused their money just as he had refused it at their wedding reception. "You are my good luck charm," he insisted. "After your wedding, my business took off. People wanted to eat where the cowboy and his bride had their reception. I owe you more than a free meal." After dinner, they walked through town hand in hand, Olivia's head on Bennett's shoulder. They were older now, both in their 40s, their hair touched with gray and their faces lined with the years of hard work under the desert sun. But they were still deeply in love, still the cowboy and the laundress whose story had captured the town's heart. "You remember when you proposed?" Olivia asked as they stood by the creek where Bennett's land began. "Right here on these steps, how could I forget? I was so nervous I nearly dropped the ring." "You were perfect," Olivia said. "Everything has been perfect." "Not perfect," Bennett corrected. "We have had our share of troubles. But good. Better than I ever dreamed possible." They stood together in the gathering dusk, listening to the creek flow past just as it had flowed 20 years ago when Bennett first brought Olivia here. The ranch house was visible in the distance, lights glowing warmly in the windows. Their children were there, the older ones watching over Ruth, waiting for their parents to return. "We built a good life," Olivia said softly. "We built a great life," Bennett countered. "And we are not done yet. We have got years ahead of us still, and they did." Years of watching their children grow into fine adults. Years of watching William marry a sweet girl from town and start his own family. Years of seeing Sarah marry a banker from Tucson and move to the city, though she came home often. Years of James finding love with a rancher's daughter from the next valley over. Years of Ruth growing into a beautiful young woman who wanted to be a teacher. Through it all, Bennett and Olivia remained each other's best friend, each other's greatest love. They had started as strangers, a desperate laundress and a kind cowboy, but they had built something that would last far beyond their own lives. They had built a family, a legacy, a love story that people would tell for generations. On a warm spring evening when Bennett was 65 and Olivia 61, they sat together on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sunset paint the desert sky in brilliant colors. Their grandchildren were playing in the yard, 7 of them now, ranging from toddlers to teenagers. The sound of their laughter filled the air, sweet as music. "You remember what I told you that first day?" Bennett asked, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "In the kitchen of the boarding house. You said a lot of things that day," Olivia replied with a smile. "I said I would never let you work like that again. I said I would take care of you. And you have. For over 40 years now you have kept that promise." "I will keep it until my last breath," Bennett said. "You are my heart, Olivia. Everything good in my life came from you." "No," Olivia said, turning to look at him. "Everything good in my life came from you. You saved me, Bennett. Not just that day, but every day since. You showed me what love really is, what family really is. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have." They kissed, the kiss of two people who had loved each other for decades and would love each other for whatever time they had left. Around them, the ranch they had built hummed with life and purpose. Cattle lowed in the distance. Horses whinnied in the corrals. The creek burbled past, its song unchanged from the day Bennett first brought Olivia here. Inside the house, Sarah was helping her mother prepare dinner, talking about her own children and her life in the city. William was discussing cattle prices with his father, seeking the wisdom that only decades of experience could provide. James was teaching one of his nephews to rope, patient and encouraging just as his father had been with him. Ruth was reading to the younger grandchildren, her gentle voice making the story come alive. This was what Bennett and Olivia had built. Not just a ranch, not just a business, but a family bound by love and strengthened by the values they had instilled. Hard work, honesty, kindness, compassion. The same values that had brought them together that cold January morning so many years ago. As the sun finally set and the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the family gathered for dinner. The table was crowded, noisy with conversation and laughter. Bennett sat at the head, Olivia at his right hand where she had always been. They held hands under the table, a private gesture of connection in the midst of the cheerful chaos. Before they ate, Bennett said grace as he always did. But this time, he added something special. Lord, we thank you for this food, for this family, for this life we have been blessed to live. Most of all, we thank you for bringing Olivia and me together all those years ago. Everything good we have, everything we are, started with that moment. May our children and grandchildren remember that love is not just a feeling but a choice we make every day. May they choose to be kind, to be generous, to help those in need just as we were helped, and may they know always how much they are loved. Amen. Amen, the family echoed. The meal was full of joy and storytelling, each generation sharing their experiences and dreams. The grandchildren begged for the story of how their grandparents met, and Olivia obliged, telling it one more time with all the drama and romance that the children loved. And then your grandfather said he would never let me work like that again, she finished. And he never did. He kept that promise every single day. Because Grandma is the most precious thing in the world, Bennett added, squeezing Olivia's hand. After dinner, after the dishes were washed and put away, after the grandchildren were settled for the night, Bennett and Olivia returned to their porch. It had become their ritual, this quiet time together at the end of each day. A time to reflect, to plan, to simply be with each other. I have been thinking, Bennett said, about what comes next. What do you mean, the ranch? I'm getting older, Olivia, so are you. Maybe it is time to start thinking about stepping back, letting William take over fully. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? The ranch is your life. No, Bennett corrected gently. You are my life. The ranch is just what we built together, and William is ready. He has been ready for a while. It is time to let him have it, to make it his just as we made it ours. What will we do? Olivia asked. Whatever we want, Bennett said with a smile. Travel a bit, maybe. See some of the country we have never had time to see. Spend time with our grandchildren. Sit on this porch and watch the sunsets. Grow old together in peace. We are already old, Olivia teased. Older then, Bennett amended. The point is, we have worked hard our whole lives. We have built something lasting. Now maybe it is time to enjoy the fruits of that labor. So they did. The transition was gradual, Bennett slowly handing over more and more of the ranch operations to William while still being available for advice and guidance. Olivia, too, stepped back from the day-to-day running of the household, letting Sarah and James's wife take over. They took a trip to San Francisco, riding the new railroad and staying in a fancy hotel that made Olivia laugh with delight. They visited Sarah in Tucson and marveled at how the city had grown. They spent long weeks at the ranch just being grandparents, spoiling the grandchildren in the way grandparents do. But mostly, they simply enjoyed being together. After 45 years of marriage, they could sit in comfortable silence or talk for hours, equally content either way. They had become one of those rare couples who had grown more in love with each passing year, who had built a relationship that was strong and true and beautiful. When Bennett was 70 and Olivia 66, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. The whole family gathered at the ranch, children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren now. There was a huge feast, dancing, toasts that made everyone laugh and cry. William stood up to give a speech, his voice thick with emotion. "My father always told me that real bravery is doing the right thing even when it is hard. He showed me that on a cold January morning 53 years ago when he saw a woman in need and did something about it. He could have walked away. No one would have blamed him, but he did not. He helped my mother, and in doing so, he created all of this." He gestured around at the gathered family. "Every one of us exists because of that choice, because he was brave enough to be kind." There was not a dry eye in the room. Bennett and Olivia danced that night, slowly and carefully, their bodies not as spry as they once were, but their love as strong as ever. Olivia rested her head on Bennett's chest and listened to his heartbeat, that steady rhythm that had been her comfort for half a century. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Bennett replied. "Forever and always." They had a few more good years, years of quiet contentment and simple joys. They watched their grandchildren grow and marry and have children of their own. They saw the ranch continue to prosper under William's leadership, expanding and modernizing while still maintaining the values they had instilled. They grew old together gracefully, silver-haired and slow-moving, but still so obviously in love that it made people smile to see them. Bennett passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 75, Olivia beside him as she had been every night of their married life. She held his hand as he took his last breath, whispering words of love and comfort, promising to follow him when her time came. The funeral was huge, attended by everyone whose lives Bennett had touched. People came from all over the territory to pay their respects to the man who had been known for his kindness, his integrity, and his unwavering devotion to his wife and family. Olivia lived for 5 more years without him, years she spent surrounded by the family they had created. She told stories about Bennett to anyone who would listen, keeping his memory alive with her words. She would sit on the porch of the ranch house and talk to him as if he were still there, telling him about the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about the ranch and the cattle, and all the little details of life he had loved. On a warm spring morning, much like the morning Bennett had proposed to her so many decades ago, Olivia passed away quietly in her sleep. She was 81 years old. The family found her with a peaceful smile on her face, her hand resting on the pillow beside her as if reaching for someone. They buried her next to Bennett on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a cottonwood tree that had grown from a sapling they had planted together. The headstone was simple but meaningful. Bennett and Olivia Hawkins, together forever. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, each generation adding their own story to the legacy. But the story that was always told, the one that defined the family and gave it its heart, was the story of how it all began. The story of a laundress working in the cold and a cowboy who could not bear to see her suffer. The story of kindness that turned into love, of 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. William made sure his children knew the story, and they told their children, and on it went. The ranch house eventually became a museum of sorts, preserving the history of the family and the land. Visitors would come and hear about Bennett and Olivia, about how a simple act of compassion had created a legacy that lasted for generations. In the museum, there was a special room dedicated to their love story. It held Olivia's first dress, the blue one Bennett had bought her. It held the receipt from Mrs. Hartwell, proof that Bennett had paid Olivia's debt and set her free. It held Bennett's wedding ring and Olivia's, worn thin from decades of wear. It held letters they had written to each other on the rare occasions they were apart, letters full of love and longing. But the most prized possession in that room was something very simple. It was a faded photograph taken on their 50th wedding anniversary. In it, Bennett and Olivia sat on the porch of their ranch house, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his shoulder. They were both smiling, but it was the look in their eyes that made the photograph special. After 50 years together, they still looked at each other with wonder and love, still amazed by their good fortune in finding each other. Below the photograph was a plaque with a quote from Olivia, taken from a letter she had written to Sarah late in her life. "Your father saved my life that cold January morning, but he did more than that. He showed me that I was worth saving, that I deserved kindness and love and a good life. He taught me that one person really can make a difference, that one act of courage and compassion can change everything. We built a good life together, your father and I. We built it on love and hard work and faith in each other. And I would not trade a single moment of it, not even the hard times, because every moment led me to him and back to him again. That is what love really is. Not just the grand gestures, though those are nice too. It is showing up every day, doing the work, choosing each other again and again. It is being brave enough to care, to help, to stand up for what is right even when it is hard. Your father did that for me, and I tried to do it for him. And together, we created something that will last long after we are gone." And she was right. The love between Bennett and Olivia Hawkins did last, echoing through the generations they had created, inspiring everyone who heard their story. The ranch they had built still stood, a testament to what two people could accomplish when they worked together. The values they had lived by still guided their descendants, shaping them into good, kind, honest people. In the end, it all came back to that cold January morning in 1883, to a laundress with bleeding hands and a cowboy who decided to do something about it. A single moment of kindness that had rippled out through time, touching countless lives, creating a legacy of love that would never be forgotten. The story of how Bennett Hawkins brought Olivia Kennedy inside and never let her work like that again was more than just a love story. It was a testament to the power of compassion, to the importance of doing the right thing, to the beautiful truth that sometimes when you save someone else, you save yourself too. And somewhere, on that hill overlooking the ranch beneath the cottonwood tree, Bennett and Olivia rested together, their earthly journey complete but their love story eternal. The wind whispered through the grass, and the creek sang its endless song, and the desert bloomed in impossible colors, and all of it bore witness to a love that had started with a simple act of kindness and had grown into something magnificent. Their story lived on in every member of the family who chose kindness over indifference, who stood up for those who could not stand up for themselves, who believed in the transformative power of love. It lived on in the ranch that still bore their name, in the land they had tended and the cattle they had raised. It lived on in the values they had passed down, in the lessons they had taught not with words but with the lives they had lived. But most of all, it lived on in the hearts of everyone who had known them or heard their story, a reminder that love is not just found but created, built day by day, choice by choice, act by act. A reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is care about a stranger, that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simple kindness. And that is how a laundress working in the cold and a cowboy who could not walk away created a legacy that would last forever. A love story for the ages. A testament to the very best of what two people can be when they find each other and choose to build a life together.